Hey guys, welcome to the software engineering channel. I'm so excited about what we're going to be building together in today's video and subsequent ones to come. We're going to be building the Slack clone application together. I'm sure you all have used the Slack application. If you have not, I'm surely going to be showing you what Slack is. Slack basically is an application that enables real-time collaboration, and this is what we're going to be building together. We're going to be doing this with Blazor, TailwindCSS, and SignalR. You don't need to know anything about these technologies. This is why we're going to be building it together. If this is your first time of watching video on this channel, this is a software engineering channel, and we do things like this and review other technologies as well. If that interests you, hit the subscribe button so you can get notified about the next video. Let's dive right in, guys. So the technologies we're going to be using for this build series is Blazor Server. We're going to be using Blazor Server. We're going to be using SignalR, and we're going to be using TailwindCSS. So let's take a look at each of these technologies and just see what they do on a very high level. If you want me to go in details in each of these technologies, just leave a comment in the comment section below. But let's see how Blazor Server works. So basically, with Blazor Server, application executes on the server within the ASP.NET Core app. UI updates, events handling, and JavaScript calls are handled over a SignalR connection. So basically, the way it works is your application sits on ASP.NET Core application, which is your Blazor Server application, and you have your browser which has the DOM elements and all, and this communication happens via the help of SignalR. Yes, even Blazor, Microsoft actually uses SignalR internally to make Blazor functional. That's why SignalR is tested and trusted, because Microsoft is using it. All right, and yeah, the UI updates, event handling, the same things you would do in front-end frameworks like Angular, like React.js, and all of those cool and beautiful stuff that we love can be done on Blazor Server as well. And all of these are handled with are handled over a SignalR connection. A circuit can tolerate temporary network interruption and attempt by the client to reconnect to the server when connection is lost. So Blazor Server gives you that opportunity to be able to connect back as a client when it's just a reconnect feature, right? And all of this happens out of the box, so you're able to reconnect back to the server. And meanwhile, note that the only thing that ties your browser and your Blazor application together is basically the SignalR connection. So if that connection is lost out of the box, there is a JavaScript Blazor file that sits in your browser, and that file is responsible for reinitiating that network over SignalR to the server. Let's take a look at this diagram that should explain this clearly. So let me get a pen here. So this is the server side of things, if you will, and this is your browser. Now within your browser we have a library that is called blazor.js, blazor.server.js, and when we go into the practical aspect of things, you're actually going to see that library. Now this library is what is responsible for initiating all of this SignalR connection, connecting the client to the server, and all of those cool stuff. So everything actually starts from here, and everything actually is done within this application. So you see that your Blazor application is basically the combination of the normal .NET framework and Razor components. That's basically what it is. All of the handling of your UI changes, JavaScript events is transferred via this SignalR connection, and the results is transferred back still using the SignalR connection. And this is how Blazor Server works. That's basically the idea of calling it Blazor Server, right? Because almost everything happens within your Blazor application. The opposite to this is Blazor WebAssembly, but we're not going to be looking into that. But if you want to know the difference between your Blazor Server and your Blazor WebAssembly, leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll make a video concerning that. So let's look at SignalR. SignalR is basically a library for .NET developers that significantly simplifies the process of adding real-time web functionality to a web application. Basically, when you talk about real-time, that is the ability of your server to be able to push content down to your clients without your clients having to make any HTTP requests. Unlike the traditional way whereby we have the client server, your client pushes an HTTP request and your server pushes an HTTP response. But this is not what we're talking about in this medium. In this medium, server is able to instantaneously push down content to your web instantly. As long as that content is available within the server, is able to push down this content to your web application without your application needing to initiate a request. So there is no need to initiate a request, and this is what we mean by real time. And you've probably used this before. I mean, your push notifications, that's an example of real time. Your gaming, your gaming as well, your gaming applications, all of those happens in real time. These are the functionality that SignalR gives to a .NET developer. Under the hood, SignalR uses 4 technologies to make real-time functionality possible. These 4 technologies include WebSockets, event sourcing, forever frame, and long polling. Now, all of this technology are wrapped into SignalR. Microsoft isn't reinventing the wheel, right? So it basically leverage on the existing technology, which the most famous amongst all of them is WebSockets, and that's why it's above. Almost all the time, SignalR would initiate a real-time connection using WebSockets. The only time the rest is used is if there are cases whereby SignalR is unable to initiate a real-time communication or connection with WebSockets. So it basically falls back to either event sourcing, forever frame, or long polling in that same order. So they are basically called fallback options, and that's how it works. That's how SignalR works. And we're going to look at it in deep details, how to set it up and how to work with it when we get to that section of our application. TailwindCSS is basically a utility-first CSS framework for rapidly building custom user interface. To be honest, when I used Tailwind CSS at first, I didn't like it. And the reason why I didn't like it is because I'm used to creating a class and writing my CSS in another file. So everything looks very cool and very nice. But now I have to write a lot of utility class within my HTML. So that threw me off at first. But I mean, as any developer should do, you should have an open mind. So I had an open mind to still test things out, and to be honest, I fell in love with it because it just makes life so easy. The utility class are lovely and very easy to use. The only issue I have with it is the fact that your HTML file can get very clumsy very quickly. Hopefully that gets sorted out soon. That's a feedback for Tailwind CSS, but I love the product, and that's why we're going to be using it with Blazor to create a Slack clone. It's highly customizable, giving you all the building blocks you need to build a bespoke design, which is your custom design. Is highly customizable, very customizable. I mean, you're going to be seeing all of that when we get started. Okay, so let's set up our project. We're going to be diving into Visual Studio Code to create our Blazor Server application, set up Tailwind CSS, and yeah, that should be it. And in our next video, we should begin building our application proper. So let's dive right into Visual Studio Code. See you there. Okay, so I'm opening Visual Studio Code. I want to not Visual Studio Code, forgive me, Visual Studio. I want to assume you have Visual Studio. If you don't, you can easily go online to download the community version. It is free, and it's basically have all of the features that you need to build stuff. So let's create a new project. We're going to be creating a new project, and let's check out Blazor. So you can see we have Blazor WebAssembly. We are not using that. Blazor WebAssembly is the proper front-end framework in the sense that it doesn't merge the server side of things with the front end. It basically runs on your browser proper, but that's not what we're using. We're going to be using Blazor Server. So you select Blazor Server application, make sure it's selected, and we do next. And we are going to be building Slackiffy, and let's make sure we don't. Okay, that's fine. We can create it here, and we're placing it in the same directory. Yes, and I'm going to be using .NET 5. I'm going to be enabling HTTPS. I'm not going to be enabling Docker, and I'm not going to be enabling authentication accounts. We'll see how to figure authentication in when we get there. So let's do create to create our application. Visual Studio is going to help us scaffold our application and give us a nice setup. Okay, here we go. So we have our Blazor Server application up and running already, and to be sure everything works, let's give it a run, a build, and see if we have the traditional Blazor templates. Okay, so our application was created successfully. We are sure everything works as it should. So, okay, so that's the first thing. We have our application working. The second thing we want to do is to tie in TailwindCSS into our application. Now, this part is a little bit tricky, but if you follow me step by step, I am absolutely sure that you're going to get it right. So the first thing we want to do is to create a folder. Now, there are a million ways of actually setting up TailwindCSS, but out of the ways I've tried, I found this way much more better and easier. So I'm just going to go by this. So you create a folder, and in that folder, we're going to create a CSS file. I'm going to create a CSS file. So let's check out for a CSS file here. We should have, okay, style sheets. So you see style sheets, which is equivalent to your CSS file. We're going to name this app.css. Okay, beautiful. I'm going to clear out everything that is within, and I have some configuration file which I'm going to place in the comments, in the description below, so you can copy it from there, paste it here. Don't mind the green squiggly lines. So I have at Tailwind base, at Tailwind components, and at Tailwind utilities. You'll see the magic this is going to do for us. So basically, when we pass this, the next thing for us to do is actually to create the Tailwind configuration file, and when we pass this to the Tailwind processor, it's actually going to help us create some CSS files. And the good thing about Tailwind that I found out as well is now we're actually going to set it up using the just-in-time compiler. The good thing about the just-in-time compiler is you only get the CSS that it's in use, right? So unlike other CSS framework whereby they give you you get load of CSS classes, and you probably are using just 40%, right? But then you get to suffer the size of that load of classes. But this is just beautiful, and you're going to see the way we're going to set it up. So the next thing for us to do is to create a JSON file. The JSON file is going to serve as our Tailwind configuration file. And notice that I'm creating this file at the root of our project directory. So I'll do that again. New file. This is going to be it's going to be a JSON file. So we'll do JSON file, and we're going to call it tailwind.config. So yeah, so it ought to be a JS file, not JSON file. Sorry, that was a mistake. So we have tailwind.config.js. This is going to hold our configuration. Okay, so I have this as well. So we're going to copy it out and paste it here. Now notice a few things happening here. Now you'll notice that we have the JIT mode selected. By default, this is not there. If you go to Tailwind's website, you would not get this by default. But the reason why we want this is so that Tailwind only gets to give us the style sheets that we are currently using. So if I'm not using a particular utility class, I shouldn't have the style sheets within my CSS file. That's the idea. And we have content. So what we are saying is check out for every and anything called .razor file, because within the .razor file is where we're going to be writing our utility classes, our HTML and all. And also you want to check out for the index.html as well. Okay, I'm going to remove this. So I'll tell you what it is when we start now. I haven't done this. The next thing for us to do is to run our configuration file via Tailwind's processor. So I'm going to open my terminal. I'm going to go to my folder directory, and I'm going to open my terminal. Now I also have the command here as well to do this, and I'll tell you what this command does. So basically what this command does is we're using npx. Npx is more like, so npx is a package manager, and what we are doing here is we are telling Tailwind where it's going to find the input file, and we are saying find the input file within a folder called style. Let's be sure we actually call the styles. Okay, so we have styles, and we are saying within the styles folder we are going to find app.css, which is this app.css, and that serves as our input file. And we are saying output, give us an output within our www.root/css/app.css. Now notice that we do not have anything called app.css within here, right? But when we run this particular command, and notice that we also have this watch flag, and what this means is Tailwind is going to continually watch for all of these files that we've included here. So each time we add a new utility class, Tailwind is going to rebuild and add the equivalent styling of that class that we've just added. This is so beautiful, guys, so awesome. So let's run this. Let's give it some few minutes, and you can notice the folder. And yeah, so what npx is going to do is to fetch Tailwind, so it's able to run these other commands, which is what it's currently doing. Okay, so npx is installed. Okay, done. Awesome. So you will notice that we have a file here called app.css. Now when you check this app.css, Awesome. So what you'll find is Tailwind CSS classes. All right. So this is beautiful. Yeah. So these are Tailwind base classes. Now you will notice that we don't have anything like Flex. We don't have anything like all of the normal CSS stuff that you'd see. This is intentional. And this is why you would notice that Tailwind didn't stop execution, right? It didn't terminate the terminal. This is because it is actually watching. It is actually watching for any new utility class that we have, and I'm going to prove that to you. So having done this, the next thing for us to do is to point our Blazor to actually use CSS, because by default ASP.NET Core application uses Bootstrap, and that's why you find Bootstrap here. In fact, I'm actually going to delete Bootstrap off my project permanently because we're not going to be using Bootstrap. I'm going to delete Open Iconic because okay, so let's just leave that then. It's giving me issues. I'm going to remove it after now. Okay, so let's go to pages and let's go to hosts. In our underscore hosts.cshtml file, we will find where our application is actually linking to Bootstrap, and we should remove it because our application shouldn't link to Bootstrap. Now our application should instead link to app.css. So we have css/app.css, which is beautiful. That is what we want. We can remove this as well. Now the next thing for us to do is to actually build our application and be sure that everything works beautifully well. Yes, let's build the application. And one thing I'm also going to be introducing to us is the auto reload. It is awesome. It is super cool. All right, so we actually do not need to change something, stop building, go back to application, change another thing, and come back to build. We actually don't need to do that. With auto reload, we can always save and see the change immediately. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to dock my browser on the side and dock Visual Studio on the side as well. Now, to use the auto reload feature, you don't run your application via IIS. You run your application with this that starts without debugging. So let's run our application with this. Awesome. So we have our application running. Okay, so the next thing for us to do is to actually do some cleanup work. Let's clean up all of this. We do not need all of this in our hosts.cshtml. We don't need this. We actually want to test our Tailwind framework. We want to be sure that we have successfully integrated all of that into our application. Let's remove all of this. We do not need them. And let's go to, now you can see that it's actually restarting. It is reloading on its own. That's the auto reload. That's the auto reload feature. So we're removing all of this as well on our index page. Once you save, it reloads on its own. That's the auto reload feature there, right there. Okay, there's a problem here. It's unable to reload. Okay, it's actually reloading this, not that. Okay, so let's try it again. Okay, so let's have H1. Let's end this and try it again. Okay, so let's have hello world. Okay, so there goes our hello world. So our auto reload works perfectly well. So let's remove every other thing that we do not need. Let's go to our shared. In our shared, we have our main layout. In our main layout, we have a nav menu in there. We might also remove this survey prompt. We do not need it. We have our nav menu. Let's go to our nav menu. Now there are a lot of things going on within our nav menu that we absolutely do not need. So we're going to clear it off, and we're just going to add a text. Say navigation. Save the changes. Navigation about. Okay, so it's looking like it. And let's go to the main layout. In our main layout, we are going to alter what we have. We're going to alter what we have here. So let's just do a simple div. Let's add our nav menu into our nav menu components into our div, and also our body components into our div. And let's remove all of this. Let's save. Okay, so we're just doing few cleanups before we start the application proper. This is our application setup. Okay, so right about now, let's test our TailwindCSS class to be sure we have everything working. So let's do a div, and let's do class. Let's do a div with a text. TailwindCSS. Let's save that. Now let's do a div with. Okay, we have that. So let's give it a background red of 500. Now this is how Tailwind works. It works with all of this beautiful utility class. So with this, all I'm just saying is give it a background called red with the intensity of 500. That's basically what that is. So let's save. Changes. Now you see that, isn't that beautiful, guys? Now let's notice what actually happened here. Now you notice that Tailwind is actually rebuilding this particular command to actually see if a new utility class has been added. And what that does is it increments this file as it sees new utility class being added. Now notice that we just added a bg red of 500, and that is what we have here. That is what we have here. Initially this was not there. So with this you can easily see what your production size is going to look like, because you're not just adding unused classes that gives you big size at the end of the day. So yeah, beautiful one, guys. Our Tailwind CSS works. I can give this a padding of 4. We can give it a text of white. Let's save that. See, awesome. So we can actually remove this navigation, and we can make this. Let's get started with Slack clone. Awesome, guys. Yeah, another beautiful thing that I was going to show you with Tailwind is that you can actually set a default color. So you can actually set a default theme color with Tailwind. I mean, I'm just learning all of these things, to be honest, and I find it so fascinating. So watch this, guys. So you can actually go to your configuration and do colors, and you can actually name your colors, say Slack BG, which is Slack background. So I'm going to give it this particular code. I'm going to save this. Now I can actually go to Tailwind, my Tailwind utility class, and instead of doing background red, I can now do background dash Slack underscore BG. Watch the magic, guys. Watch the magic. Awesome. I love these, guys. So these are actually the things that made me fall in love with Tailwind CSS, and also combining it with Blazor to get the real-time functionality of Slack application going is one beautiful thing that we're going to be doing. So this is where we're going to be stopping right about here in today's video. In the next video, we're going to be diving into building our fronts, into building our UI. And to get notified about the next video, if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you are so excited about this, you want us to carry along together, please hit the like button and give a comment in the comment section below about what exactly interests you in this video. See you on the next one, guys. Bye bye.